This episode is made possible by Roundel. Partner with Roundel and reach the over 165 million guests who look to Target for joy and inspiration. Together with you, they'll design curated media solutions that are a seamless extension of the Target experience, all backed by unparalleled first-party data and measurement. Learn more at roundel.com.
Consumer spending is starting to wobble, and it's wobbling more violently at the sort of mid to lower end of the economic spectrum. And people that are in those tax brackets, when they look to tighten their belts, the first thing they look at is little treats like coffee that costs $5 a cup.
Hey gang, it's Tuesday, the 18th of June. Max, Susie, Paul, and listeners, welcome to the Buying Numbers Daily, an e-marketer podcast made possible by Roundel. I'm Marcus, barely hanging on apparently, and today I'm joined once again by three people. Let's meet them. Our senior analyst covering digital advertising and media based in Philly, it's Max Willens.
Yo.
We have our VP of content who runs our retail desk based in New York City, it's Susie David Canyon.
Hi.
And our VP of content for ads, media, and tech based in the New York countryside, it's Paul Werner.
Hey, great to be here.
We start with today's fact. Why are they called French fries? Do you know this?
Maybe.
You don't know this.
I know they're Belgian, but I don't know why they're
Yes!
called French fries.
That is why. They might be French. No one really knows. But what I found out was, according to the National Geographic... Wait, Susie, do you know this?
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. According to the National... You're going to pretend afterwards that you knew it.
I would never do such a thing.
You would always.
Never.
According to the National Geographic, American soldiers learned about fries while stationed in Belgium during World War I. And since the dominant language of southern Belgium is French, they dubbed the tasty potatoes French fries. And also I found out, according to a survey of 100% of people said that mayonnaise is a perfectly acceptable condiment with fries, according to everyone with taste buds.
Everyone, sample size
Guess
of one.
I have none then, because for me, mayonnaise is not a condiment for anything,
Paul.
much less French fries.
So
Well, the
disappointing.
spicy
Vinegar,
mayo.
yes. Vinegar, okay. Ketchup, better. Cocktail sauce.
Oh
That's
my
my secret
goodness.
weapon.
Where are we right now?
Underrated.
Because it's got everything that ketchup has, plus the zing and the
Oh,
zest
you should
of
try the
horseradish.
spicy mayo.
Are you
That's
selling this?
amazing.
What's going on right
The
now?
chipotle mayo. Do that
No
one.
way. No kind of mayo for me.
I actually like fries
No.
with nothing, to be honest with you.
Oh,
if you get good
Plain?
fries, if you get good fries with a little bit of salt and they're brand new
That's
right
worse
out.
than Paul's suggestion. Cocktail sauce, whatever he said. Max, come on. All right. Today's real topic. Some more very specific but highly unlikely predictions for 2024. Shark Tank style, part 2. In today's episode, we'll cover 3 more very specific but highly unlikely predictions for this year. We covered 3 in yesterday's episode. We have 3 more for you right now. Quick recap, in case you weren't there yesterday. Each person, Max first, will have 60 seconds to pitch a very specific but highly unlikely prediction for 2024. Then the rest of us, me, Paul, and Susie, and folks listening will decide if we are going to invest in his prediction. Invest meaning, do we believe in it? Then we move on to the next contestant and repeat. So Susie will be next. Me, Max, and Paul will become the new panel. Each of our guests has one prediction for you today. We had another one yesterday. Let's go. Max is kicking us off. And today he is talking about advertisers saying that they will not coalesce around a measurement standard for retail media until the aggregators' peak growth subsides. Max, talk to us.
Yes, so the simple reality is that the thing that kind of drove retail media to grow really quickly in its offing was the pre-existing relationships between advertisers and retailers via trade dollars and shopper marketing. The second phase of retail media, which is just getting underway, which I wrote about in a recent report, is about the sort of dawning of the offsite era of retail media ad spending. And because this is in its infancy and because it is being driven by lots of aggregators of supply, people like Criteo, people like The Trade Desk, people like Sky and PacView and so on, they are going to basically have a whole set of runway to work with. And that's going to buy themselves some time before buyers start looking around and going, okay, we really need to start simplifying this and figuring things out and getting some consistency in what we buy. So they've got at least a year before the pressure to get to a standard rises up.
Max, can you clarify? Did you say the offsite? What was the term you used? The offsite era, or?
Oh, the beginning of the offsite spending era. So most of the spending that's happened in retail media over the last several years has been on-site spending. So sponsored search listings, display ads on the owned and operated properties of, Amazon, Walmart, Target's websites, things like that.
And the prediction is that everything's going to move offsite? Sorry, I don't know how I missed
the prediction is, sorry, we're going 100 miles an hour here. Basically, there have been calls as retail media has grown up for there to be some standardization
the metrics.
around.
Got it. Sorry,
That's exactly right. So we're looking at, even though there are people that talking about measurement standards and things of the like on conference stages and in white papers and so on, there really isn't going to be any kind of industry, consensus building that happens in earnest for at least a year.
Oh, you think it's not going to happen? They're not going to coalesce.
That's right.
Oh, got it.
That's right.
I'm sad about that one. I give that half a point.
Do you agree, Susie?
I think
by Susie's standards, that's a yes. That's a
so then I guess it's a no. I was just trying to be nice. Only because I think that there is only so much money to go around and the economy is a little bit tight. And so everybody's cutting budgets. And so if you can't prove the value of where you're spending your money, you're not going to get that money again. And so it's in the best interest of the advertisers to push the retail media networks to have some sort of, now they might not have a metric system that cuts across all of them because they don't want to give away their secret sauce between the different networks. But I think that there's going to be more pressure, immediate pressure to figure out a way to measure success.
I disagree.
Clearly.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I think the core prediction of there not really being any measurement standards anytime, in the short horizon, I agree with that. But I think a big factor, maybe the biggest factor, is that Amazon controls still, 75% of the market in the US and will continue to. Like, there's no forecast horizon that we see where Amazon is going to be less than like a major dominant player. And they don't really have a lot of incentive to create like any kind of standardized measurement approach. So I think that's definitely what's holding things back as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I wanted to squeeze this pitch into as tight a space as I could, but to me, that's exactly right. I think by our own forecast, they're going to control at minimum 77% of the market through 2026. And, when you have an 800-pound gorilla in a space who gets to make its own rules, they're not going to do anything that, keeps the money from flowing in. So to me, that's an argument in favor of my thesis here.
Are we investing? Susie was like, put some money on the table and then very quickly snatched it back.
Well, I think even Amazon, though they are 70%, is going to have to do some, whether it's metrics we believe in or not are the right ones, or whether we think they're softballing, whatever it, and I'm not saying any company would do that, but I'm just saying like it might not be the end all be all metrics, but I do think everybody's going to need to be able to show their value as a must have vendor, no matter who you are and how big you are.
I do want to clarify, Susie, that like Amazon, Walmart, and most of the other large RMNs do offer
some
measurement
value,
proving
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have ROAS, stats. They do have attribution, but it's just that there's no consistency there. But
right.
If you spend $1 on Amazon, Amazon has lots of features within its platform to show that you made $1.25 or whatever the ROAS happens to be. So it's not like you're just pouring money down a well and hoping that something grows in your garden down the way. It's much more tightly, mapped out than that. There is closed loop
it's
reporting.
Just not across them.
Right. That's correct. And as a marketer, if you're, and I don't know what the current stats on how many average RMNs marketers use, but it's got to be like 4 or 5. So you basically have to do this for every network because there's no standard that cuts across.
I mean, but technically ROAS
kind of
is the same, like you measure ROAS the same way, no? I think it's more like, is that the right measure even to decide whether your money is performing well, especially offsite?
All right, I'm pressing you for investments. Susie, are you in? You half in? You out?
I'm half in.
Oh, half in still. Okay. Max managed to convince her for half her investment points. Paul?
I'm in.
He's in. I'm torn, so I'm going half in. All right, folks. Yeah, Max mentioned his report. There's some fascinating stuff in there. One of the things I pulled out, size of retail media, currently 14% of all ad spending, not just digital. Digital is pretty much most of it at this point. But of all ad spending, 14% of it is retail media today, according to our forecast team. And they expect it to go from 14 to 25% over the next 4 years. So reaching 25% of all ad spending being retail media by the next Olympics in 2028. The full report is called Retail Media Ad Spending Forecast H1 2024. Offsite ads rise sparks a new era. I will put a link in the show notes for folks who want to check that out. All right, Susie,
you know what? I would give it another half point if it was measurement is not going to happen between all of the different digital ad spaces in a similar sort of standardized way, not just between all the different networks.
Max, are you willing to change your prediction for an extra half an investment point?
I want to make sure I understand what Susie is asking. So are you saying like that there's a methodology that applies not just to Amazon, but also to TikTok and the Trade Desk and like that? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, that it should be like if you're measuring the success of your ad dollar, it should be regardless of the type of channel or platform you use, right? So that you can measure apples to apples.
I see. There's no way that happens.
Yeah, because it's not happening in any one of these spaces.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying. If that was your prediction, it's not going to happen across all of advertising, then I'm all in.
Max has taken half the point and keeping his current prediction. Fair. Let's move to the next prediction. We've got Susie up. She is saying to stop the leaky bucket, Starbucks will pilot drone delivery in select cities. Susie, go.
So everybody knows that there are pockets of growth in retail and fast food and quick service restaurants and fast casual. And then there are companies that are not doing well. And surprisingly, for the last 2 quarters in the US, Starbucks has not been doing especially well. And they have had some weaker than expected earnings. And a lot of that is coming from their more casual consumers. The folks that are loyal, that have their app and that order through the app, I think it sounds like based on the earnings call, are sort of still spending, but it's the casual users that are not going as often. And so Starbucks has slashed their forecast and admittedly says that they're struggling a little bit because of consumer spending. So I think they just announced that Grubhub is going to be another delivery partner. They realize that they are seeing growth in that delivery channel. People are ordering for delivery. So they have now partnered with Grubhub. They already were with DoorDash from last year, and they have Uber Eats. Maybe it's no coincidence that now Grubhub will also be available on Amazon. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can go through Grubhub to order stuff, which is kind of nuts. So it's going to open up the consumer potential for Starbucks by being on Grubhub. And then I think just the next iteration of how do you get coffee into hands quickly is through drone delivery. So I wouldn't be surprised, given that Walmart's pilot from 2021 is now moving beyond a pilot and is increased in coverage and scope. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, coffee is easy to deliver through a drone, just hot. So that part I'm not sure. If it's a shaky drone, what'll happen. But that's my prediction.
Yeah, the hot liquid falling from the sky thing is what I think kind of makes people a bit nervous about this. But Susie, you think that it's people are not spending because of speed as opposed to Starbucks' prices in the current inflationary climate?
It's not that they're not spending because they're not getting it fast enough, because they are, right? You order through the app. I mean, there are now stores that are just pickup only through the app, right? So it's not so much speed of getting the coffee in your hand. I think it's just the convenience factor of getting it delivered to you, a hot coffee.
Fair.
If you think about around me, I mean, I live in the city. There used to be a lot more Starbucks than there are now. They've converted some of the Starbucks to just like the windows where you pick up your stuff and you leave and there's no room at all to hang out. But a lot of them are also closing. And I think there is something about instant gratification.
Yeah, I do wonder how quickly someone can be converted to being someone who is skeptical of how safe these things are to being someone who's like, oh yeah, delivered my drink once, fine, I'm all in. I found one survey, I think this was a survey in an article by Rachel Wolf, who writes for our retail briefing. 57% of consumers had little to no trust in drones to deliver products safely. It's according to a Morning Consult survey. But maybe with, one successful delivery, there'd be converts potentially.
Or, I mean, it's 1 in 2, right? So it's not so, I mean, it's still 1 in 2 people feel fine about it. And I think if it wasn't successful, Walmart wouldn't be moving from pilot to increasing coverage.
Right, across a number of states.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe then it's a little bit extra work for Starbucks. They have to put in a special bag maybe that's like protective versus you coming through the window or like an Uber. But if you think about it, in New York, we have the Uber drivers are on bicycles. So that can't be, there's got to be containers. They've already had to figure that out for the
They're probably
hot
not
liquid.
going to be just like one of those grab hand like machines that just holds it very gingerly at the top and just drags your drink through the sky. There's probably going to be a liquid sealed box of some description,
Something.
I'm sure.
But I do think, to your original question, I mean, Kohl's is partnering with Instacart. Do I think it's going to help? It's just on the margin in terms of if your customers aren't coming for your core product, which is expensive coffee, then getting it into their hand quickly, is that going to make a difference?
Yeah.
Sounds like you're arguing against yourself here, Susie. I'm going to preempt Marcus and just say I am completely out on this. Only because I think that the reason that Starbucks is struggling is because of stuff that we have talked about a little bit in the last episode, which is just that like consumer spending is starting to wobble, and it's wobbling more violently at the sort of mid to lower end of the economic spectrum. And people that are in those tax brackets, when they look to tighten their belts, the first thing they look at is little treats like coffee that costs $5 a cup. And so I think that, be it convenience or novelty, whatever the answer is, if Starbucks wants to do this, they should cut their prices by $1 every Friday or something, not drop it out of the sky on my head.
I will tell you that they are definitely doing more coupons for their valued customer. There is something called the lipstick effect, which is sort of the reverse in that if you are having a tough time and you are sad, you buy yourself these little baby luxuries that on the surface don't cost a lot, like a $6 coffee, but make you feel good, which is why usually beauty does okay and is recession-proof. There are luxury chocolates that are typically also, they do well during a recession. I think coffee is one of those that's a little bit harder. It's because, Starbucks in particular, it's because of the inflation, right? The commodity coffee beans started costing so much more that all of the prices increased in a way that was probably unsustainable for consumers. So I think their world is a little bit different. But what I will say is my prediction is not, do I think it's going to help them? Because it's not my prediction. I think on the margin, it might make a small difference for their overall business, but I don't see why they wouldn't try it if they're already going with Grubhub.
I am a drone delivery skeptic. And I also think that if there were going to be drone delivery, coffee is not where I would invest.
There are a fair amount of companies testing drones out. I mean, you mentioned Walmart, they're the biggest one, but our retail writer, as I mentioned, Rachel Wolf, noting Panera's customers in Seattle and Jet's Pizza customers in Detroit will soon be able to receive orders by drone thanks to a partnership with startup Zipline. It's an enticing proposition. Timothy Pompandreu of Forbes was writing, drones ditch the carbon footprint for clean electric motors soaring past traffic jams and saving up to 80% in energy consumption compared to traditional vans. It sounds great. We'll see. Susie, I'm giving you half a point.
Thank you.
So half a point for Susie's. You're welcome. Not out of pity, maybe. Paul, we're going to end with yours. You're talking about the publisher AI gold rush, and you think that's going to continue in H2. So what's going on here is that AI needs to use news to train its large language models so that they are smarter programs, and it was just taking all of that news and just training its AI systems. But then there's two camps. The New York Times, one publisher, says, no, you need to pay us for that, and is suing OpenAI, one of these AI companies, for using its stuff, its news, without permission. There's a few other smaller folks, Chicago Tribune, some others as well. But they're kind of on an island by themselves. Then in the other camp, you have a lot of the other major publishers who have done deals with AI companies to say, you can use the content, but you have to pay us for it. And there's a couple here. Associated Press, single-digit millions per year deal with OpenAI, the FT. Their deal is $5 to $10 million a year. Our parent company, Axel Springer, signed a 3-year deal for about $25 to $30 million. And News Corp, a huge 5-year deal with OpenAI, valued as much as $250 million in cash.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of major publishers have already signed deals to license their content to OpenAI and other AI platforms. And even though when you look at the list of the ones who already have, it seems like, that's pretty much almost everyone, but there actually are still some holdouts. And I think that those are going to start coming on board. And I think that publishers that are, not as well-known brands, sort of like the long tail, they have even more incentive to do this. And, I don't necessarily think this is a great trend. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about how that content is going to be used or potentially misused. But in a way, it's just another example of publishers kind of getting the short end of the stick, digitally speaking, since the dawn of the internet. I mean, it started with people wanting and expecting news content to be free, and then it was social media basically amassing audiences of news consumers and stealing a lot of the thunder from publishers, and now it's AI. So I think it's an indication of just how stressed publishers are for revenue. And this is, as someone on LinkedIn put it, basically burning the furniture to stay warm.
Paul, it does seem like these deals feel panicked, and because they're not for a ton of money. And it does seem like they're thinking to themselves, let's get something now, kind of a settlement out of court, because we might not get anything down the road.
I continue to find it bewildering that media companies and other publishers have not only inked these deals, but have inked them at prices that to me are astonishingly low. I'm thinking Reddit isn't exactly a media company per se, but when I saw the amount of money that they voluntarily took from Google to allow Gemini to dig through and use its content to train its model, that just struck me as absolutely crazy. I agree that, Paul, that there are going to be lots of publishers now beating down the doors of places like OpenAI and Gemini in hopes of getting a check. But I also feel like what you said earlier is true, which is that there are not a lot of places left that are worth that effort on the part of OpenAI. Are there particular holdouts that you think are going to benefit from this gold rush in H2? Because I sort of struggle to think of, big fish that might, get reeled in here.
If you look across the landscape, it's conceivable that the New York Times lawsuit gets settled in a way that actually results in a deal. There are also companies, just to think of a couple off the top of my head, like CNN and Bloomberg, that have not done this.
The Washington Post too, right?
Washington Post. So, there are some big brands out there that have not jumped on board this bandwagon.
Susie, you in?
I understand what we're saying. I just think it's like the cat's out of the bag. And so I just don't know what we can do about it. And it's like you kind of have to just keep going and like follow the trends, or you go out of business kind of.
Right. So you think, it sounds like you agree then that there will still be, a few more deals, however many big fish, to Max's point, are still in the ocean, and they will ultimately have to do deals with these AI companies.
Well, yeah, I agree, because otherwise what are they going to do? They're just going to lose.
Susie's in. I'm in. Max?
I think I'm out. I hear
Interesting.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that there are enough the ones that are holding out, I think have enough of a moat around them that they can afford to wait this out for a little while. Bloomberg, for example, has a very valuable audience. They have a scaled subscription business. And fundamentally, they can credibly make the argument that the information that they sit on is worth paying for, and is, there's no reason for them to sort of allow the wall between that information and non-paying customers to get more permeable. I also think that we're just going to, it's very telling that the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, who has a very close and personal look at the potential of generative AI because he's an investor in Perplexity, has not signed a deal like this. I think he understands the trade-off there being very valuable. So yeah. I'm out on this.
All right, Max is out. So let's recap. Max had his advertisers will not coalesce around a measurement standard for retail media until the aggregator's peak growth subsides. Prediction, 2 investment points total. Susie's prediction that to stop the leaky bucket, Starbucks will pilot drone delivery in select cities, 0.5 an investment point. And Paul had the publisher AI Gold Rush continuing in H2, and he gets 2 investment points total there. That's it for today's episode. As I mentioned, we covered 3 other predictions in yesterday's show, so go check that one out if you would like. But a huge thank you to my guests for today and yesterday. Thank you to Susie.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to Paul.
Thank you.
And to Max.
Always a pleasure, Marcus. Thank you.
And to Victoria, who edits the show, Stuart, who runs the team, and Sophie, who does our social media. Thanks to everyone for listening in to the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast made possible by Roundel. We're off tomorrow in observance of Juneteenth. We hope to see you Thursday for an episode about just how far have the TV and CTV scales tipped.
Bam!